Robservations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, Imagination Connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your Master of Fun and Wonder, your Viceroy of Verisimilitude, your... what am I? The Archbishop of Banterbury. Ooh, I forgot my Chancellor of Cheerfulness, Sommelier of Sci-Fi, Archbishop of Banterbury, whatever. Blah, 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 blah. It's all names you've hung on me. Anyway, I am Robert Meyer Burnett, and this is... I'm changing the numbering of the show because... our last show turned out to be a special edition. This is, in fact, Robservations, episode number 630. Robservations, the show about something. Our last episode that was 630 is now a Robservations special feature dealing with Dota Dragon's Blood. So for those of you who know me and know the channel, well, I got to reveal all. You got to meet a great bunch of folks. What a fun time that was. Talking about the show that I've worked on with some of the great people I've worked on the show with. So, I was going to do a different show today. I was going to talk about different stuff. But then an hour ago, I was just looking around for stories. I did another companion video for John Campia, which it's 3 hours long, processing, sending it up his way shortly. So I was just looking around, like, what is there to talk about? And, lo and behold, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gentle beings, kind souls across these 28 known galaxies. I have to tell you, I am getting, first of all, if you look at human history, it is a charnel house, ladies and gentlemen. It is, we are not a pretty species. We've not been nice to each other throughout, well, maybe since the dawn of time. And one of the things that I find odd is somebody put it on Twitter so succinctly. How does a generation that grew up with The Simpsons and South Park, how have they grown up to be so offended by everything? And I don't know. And maybe it's because I have grown up understanding that human beings are multifaceted, they're all kinds of crazy, and nobody is perfect. I mean, that goes all the way back to Scripture. Let he who's without sin cast the first stone. What's that about? Like, of course, why is it that we now live in a world where we have people that are they're looking to be offended, they're looking to play the victim, I don't get it. Like, I don't understand. Is that because their own lives are so fulfilling that they feel fulfillment? Like, I'm going to be part of this righteous group, and I'm going to go after something because in doing the right thing, it makes me feel better about myself. As opposed to say, I don't know, creating something that's uniquely yours that didn't exist before. How about doing some work? How about adding to the fabric of human existence rather than trying to take away either other people's work or other people themselves? It's such a strange thing to me. I mean, I think one of the things that makes us human, one of the things that makes us so fascinating and so worthy of both respect and study is the fact that we are imperfect. I mean, if you are a religious person or you believe in Judeo-Christian scripture, aren't we all sinners? Well, if you proceed from that baseline, well, then it shouldn't surprise anybody that that we're not all perfect. And shouldn't then forgiveness be the very first thing that you would do with somebody, rather than come after them? I mean, I understand if somebody's committed an egregious crime against mankind or somebody's perpetrated a horrible crime against another person. That's one thing. I totally understand that. But what I find strange is that we live in a continually evolving society. Things, and I've said this before on this show, things have always been evolving and they are getting better. There is more opportunity for different kinds of people than there has ever been. We have more respect and more caring and more openness and more, well, there's less racism, there's less sexism, there's less isms than ever before as a natural evolution of our society. Do you know why? Because those things are wrong. It is wrong to discriminate against other people for their religious beliefs, for their color of their skin, for their sexuality. It's wrong. And it has been changing ever so slowly, sometimes in fits and starts. I mean, 20 years ago, would you have thought that there would have been same-sex marriage as the law across the land? I wouldn't have. As a matter of fact, a lot of my LGBTQ friends would have told you that there's no way they would have believed it would have happened so quickly. Many of those people are now married and are in terrific relationships with their partners and spouses. This happened quickly, but it did happen. Hell, I can light up a spliff right now and get stoned to the bejesus if I wanted to. That's legal in the state of California. These are all things that have been evolving. They've been evolving naturally. Why? Because these are the right things to do. It isn't right to discriminate against people because of their sexuality. They didn't choose that. I didn't choose to be a straight man that liked big boobs and likes Zoftic hippie women. I didn't choose that. It just happened. That's how I was born. I've always liked that. Now, do you think somebody who was born attracted to a member of the same sex, do you think that that's the way that they would necessarily wanted to be? No, they just were. That's how they were born. I mean, we will even find out that people who are trans, do they want to be trans? No, they just are. So, I mean, this is naturally occurring, people. These are things that are here because they are naturally occurring. The problem that we have is that we have had a hard time coming to grips with things that are part of the natural fabric of the universe. You know, beginning all the way from, well, yep, Earth is not the center of the universe. The sun does not go around us. We're not the center of everything. Oh, boy. But for a long time, we thought we were. You know what? We were wrong. We were wrong. We were wrong. Just like we're wrong to discriminate against people. You want to discriminate against somebody that has different skin color than you? Why? Because their ancestors grew up in a place that had literally different weather conditions. You grow up in Africa, where the cradle of civilization, where all of human beings came from. I mean, if you really want to look into it, at one point, every human being that was on this planet was black. So black is our origin. Black is where we came from. To be prejudicial against anyone who's black is to be prejudicial against literally the genesis of humanity. We should feel the exact opposite about our black brothers and sisters. They represent the dawn of time, the dawn of man, the beginning of humanity. That would be something that you should celebrate. My God. You know, how cool is that? That you have ancestors that can directly be traced back to the first human beings on the planet. I think that's pretty dope. Yet, wait, because all of us, you know, as we migrated across the planet, we were in less sunny climates. We needed less pigmentation, and the melanin in our skin changed, and so did our features. How does that make us better than someone else who was around before we were? I don't know. It's all stupid. And we have been slowly, it might have taken us thousands and thousands of years, and I understand we have a genetic predisposition sometimes, not like things that are different, but ultimately, you know, if we start going to the stars, we're not going to go to the stars as straight people or gay people or white people or black people. We will go to the stars as beings from Earth, human beings. We will be the one race that we were always have been destined to be and are the one race that we are. Humans from Earth. When we meet somebody from another planet, we will always be humans from Earth. Let's hope we meet those people soon, because maybe it'll teach us lessons we need to learn. But anyway, and none of us are perfect. None of us are imperfect. Do you want to go back and litigate all of human history, and every single person that did something bad in their lives gets no chance to redeem themselves? Or if they did something questionable, they couldn't have, you know what? That was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. But the times there were a change in, I was one way, things changed. whatever. We're not even giving a chance to people to like redeem themselves. What the hell? Who are we becoming? Who are we becoming? Which brings me to Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss. Theodore Gessel? Theodore Gessel. Dr. Seuss was canceled. Yes, he was canceled. He was canceled, or I should say his work was canceled. Anyway, let's jump into it. This was in Deadline. This was published at 2:13 this afternoon. 2:13 in the afternoon. So this is hot off the presses, people. Hot off the presses. I don't know if we should call it hot off the presses, but my God. So let's jump into this article. Written by Bruce Herring. Dr. Seuss canceled by Virginia school system for Read Across America Day. Now, I don't know about any of you, but when I was a kid, my parents got me the whole set of Dr. Seuss books. When I was a kid, I had them all lined up on my bookshelf. I loved all of the Doctor Seuss books. Dr. Seuss books. I've probably been saying Doctor Who the whole time. Dr. Seuss. Loved them. I didn't care if it was Horton Hears a Who. I didn't care if it was Green Eggs and Ham. I love Dr. I love the illustrations. I love the prose. Every kid must love Dr. Seuss. But in Virginia, they do not like Green Eggs and Ham or Dr. Seuss. The good Dr. Seuss, a.k.a. Theodore Gessel, has been dropped from the annual Read Across America event, a national day to encourage reading. Dr. Seuss books have long been a staple of the program. Dr. Seuss, a major supplier of content for television and film through such characters as The Grinch, The Cat in the Hat, and Horton Hears a Who, was banned because his books allegedly have strong racial undertones, according to the school system. The Loudoun County, Virginia schools said they will look forward towards books they believe are more, quote, inclusive and diverse and reflective of our student community. A spokesman said, "Are Dr. Seuss books supposed to be reflective of your own student community?" Wade B. Bard, a Loudoun school spokesman, said research uncovered strong racial undertones in many books written or illustrated by Dr. Seuss, the Washington Post reported. Given this research and the LCPS focus on equity and culturally responsive instruction, LCPS has provided guidance to schools in the past couple of years to not connect Read Across America Day with Dr. Seuss's birthday exclusively, Bard said. Despite the ban from Read Across America, Dr. Seuss will still be available in libraries and classrooms in the district. So what does that mean? So you're banning his work from Read Across America, but you're still going to keep them available in libraries and classrooms? So is he canceled or not? Are you being hypocritical or not? Is there racial undertones or not? And if they are you're leaving them in the classrooms, but you're not going to have an event that celebrates them, even though Dr. Seuss's books have been under fire for some time by woke observers who believe they are not diverse in their presentation. A 2019 report claimed some of the books feature animal or non-human characters that transmit Orientalist, anti-black, and white supremacist messaging through their allegories and symbolism. Additionally, Gessel had done controversial cartoons with racist overtones before he became a well-known children's author. He claimed that it was just the way things were 50 years ago when confronted about long-hidden cartoons. Are you kidding me? First of all, are we going to get rid of our entire cultural legacy that happened before, I don't know, the last 10 years? Because if you go back 10 years or so, everything in all of human history has racist overtones, because pretty much that's where we're at. That's where we're at. And you know what? They're probably not wrong. they're probably not wrong, because human beings have hated each other for all of our history. There is hatred toward everybody. There is still slavery going on today. Women are still having acid thrown in their faces. LGBT people are thrown off buildings in parts of the world today. We are still a horrible group of people that don't yet deserve to go to the stars. But when is it going to end? When are we going to admit that our lives have been messed up since humanity lived on this planet, since we came out of the trees? And are we going to get rid of all art and all literature because what? Because it contains ideas or concepts that's offensive to everybody or some people? When are we going to man up and just acknowledge that our history is full of horrors that we perpetrated against each other? When are we going to realize that? And when are we going to recognize that those things existed? And that we shouldn't cancel them because that's where we've been. That's who we were. These were the facts of life. This is what happened. Are we going to pretend? Are we just going to get rid of everything that offends somebody today? When did we become such fucking pussies? I'm sorry, can I say that, or is that offensive to somebody? And when I say that, I mean like a meek kitten, just to be, I'm a cat owner. You know, a kitten can get very scared and run under the couch. That's what I mean. But when are we going to start manning up? Can I say manning up? Or do I have to worry that that's going to offend somebody? I would dare say the people these days that are offended by things, they're the ones that should run away, because their weakness and their anti-intellectualism, they are a clear and present danger to our lives, to all of our lives. And what are we going to do about it? I mean, when does it end? Seriously, when does it end? Who are these people to decide that they're going to, if they haven't, and it's all people that haven't created themselves too. You ever notice that? It's always people that are like, well, they've never done anything. They've never made anything. They've never created something from scratch. Dream something up and make it into, create something new. Make something that never existed before. Take a risk. No. They would rather just come after everybody else. Why? Who gave them the right? I would say that the people, we need to turn the tables. The artists, anybody who has a brain in their head, we need to start turning the tables on this entire ridiculous, let's come burn somebody or burn their work to the ground because, oh, I'm offended. Or better yet, oh, I'm out there canceling people for the other guy. I'm going to tell you what you should and shouldn't see. This is the very worst impulse of the modern age, and we need to get rid of it. We need to get rid of this idea that somehow you need to protect somebody from themselves, that you're doing this for the good of all people. No, you're not. You're doing it to make yourself feel better because you don't have anything else in your life that you care enough about that occupies your time. That's the real threat here. And going after Dr. Seuss, I mean, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. Since, if Dr. Seuss's work has always been the way it was, what does that say about us? That we suddenly have recognized that there's like Orientalist. I hear the word Orientalist. I'm like, can we even say that anymore? I mean, it's. Does anybody remember how we treated the Chinese that were helping build our railroads? I'll give you a hint. Horribly. How did the Japanese treat the Chinese during World War II? Pretty awfully. Ever heard of the rape of Nanking, or can we not say that anymore? I mean, my God, people. Humanity is full of instances of one group of people hating another group of people. Sometimes in the same town. The Hatfields and the McCoys hated each other over a fence line. I mean, give me a break. We need to be better. We need to start thinking for ourselves and realizing that, oh, these things are so hurtful. If things are so hurtful to you, the problem is not with the things. The problem is with you. If you are hurt by these things so badly, the problem is your problem. It's not everyone else's problem, and it's not your place to go suddenly insinuate yourself into our lives and tell us what we can or can't see. It's the most un-American, undemocratic, unfree thing I've ever heard of in my life. And you know what? There's a lot of people that disagree with me. That's what's so scary. That's what terrifies me. Well, you know, Rob, we got a point. These things are making people feel sad. I feel sad all the time about certain things. But, you know, I don't blame other people. It's my own problem. I just don't understand. When, you know, eventually everything is going to get canceled. Remember I was talking about, I don't know, a month or two ago about get rid of all the old texts. Like, let's get rid of Shakespeare. Shakespeare is part of the white male patriarchy, so why study him? Well, because his works have endured for hundreds of years. What have you written that's endured for hundreds of years? I mean, you know why it irks me to no end. You know, we should go back and rearrange human history so there was no hunter-gatherer culture based on biology, because back in the day when predators were chasing men across the African veldt because they had to bring home the food, and women were the caregivers because, you know, when you have babies at home, the men have to go out and fight and find the food so the women can take care of the kids. So, oh, wait, so the human race could exist. I mean, that's where our roles came from. And yes, they've evolved, but nothing can really change the fact that if we want the human species to perpetuate until we come up with some really cool genetic and medical technology that's really interesting, women still have to bear children. I mean, what are we going to do? But it's just, at the end of the day, it's just irksome. Everybody is, why not just burn it all to the ground now? Why don't we get rid of everything, and then just everything? Let's just get rid of it all. Why don't we get rid of all technology while we're at it and start over to make sure that, oh, I don't know, physics isn't an invention of the patriarchy or some other stupid shit. I mean, it drives me crazy. It's just ridiculous. I mean, don't we have better things to do? Why aren't people creating things? Why are they wanting to destroy things that were created by others? Why don't we flip the script, people? If you're angry about something, why not go create something that counters whatever it is you feel is bad? If you feel something is not good or there's an injustice that's been done, why not go make something of your own that counters that? Use that anger and go make something that didn't exist before. Add something to the world rather than take it away. Because it's harder to do that. It's easier because, you know, you can have a knee-jerk moment where you get angry and you can type something or go after something or get mad at Henry Cavill for once dating Gina Carano. Let's go after Henry Cavill for that. Listen, let me tell you. Any man worth his salt is going to look at a guy like Henry Cavill and a woman like Gina Carano and say, you know what? The human race would be better off with that coupling than anybody I know. I mean, give me a break. You know what I said on Twitter today? I said, you know what? If I was 9 years old, I probably would have run a scenario in my mind where Superman landed at the Lars homestead on Tatooine, where instead of landing on Earth, Superman landed and became Luke Skywalker, except his name was Kal-El. And Kal-El became a Jedi Knight. And you know what? In his travels after Order 66 and the Empire and all that, Kal-El would have, you know, lived at a time where he came across Cara Dune and thought, well, I don't need to live up to the Jedi Order anymore. This is a hot, strong woman, and I want to get busy with her. And I would have shipped Cara Dune and Kal-El Jedi Knight and had them get together. And I would have had a good time doing it. What's wrong with that? Oh, but apparently not anymore. Not anymore. I don't know. Why don't we just preemptively get rid of everything and everybody? Why don't we do that? Because everything is going to eventually offend everyone. Or better yet, why don't we not do that? And we understand things and respect things and know that we're imperfect people. We came with an imperfect history. And it's better to go do something, put yourself out there, take a risk, be better than go after other people who, I don't know, if it gives you a nice feeling of accomplishment when you go tear somebody else down. Instead of doing that, why don't you do something that adds to the fabric of humanity? Do something, anything. I don't know what it is, but try doing it. Maybe you'll feel even better than you will, I don't know, trying to get Henry Cavill canceled for dating Cara Dune, or complaining about, Dr. Seuss has problematic messaging. You know what has problematic messaging these days? Biology. Our human biology is being told that, that's problematic. I mean, where is it going to end? Existence itself is going to be canceled at some point. It's going to be like V'ger. V'ger's like, carbon units infest Enterprise, infest the Earth too. We're going to get to the point where someone says, you know what, human existence is an affront. So what we should do is just get rid of all human beings. Why don't we get rid of all human beings, and then nobody will be offended? I mean, I'm sure that movement is going to come, probably sooner rather than later. But now, right today, this afternoon, we find out it's Dr. Seuss on the chopping block. No longer can the Grinch steal Christmas. No longer can we eat green eggs and ham. No longer can Horton hear a who. And no longer can the cat wear a hat, apparently. Where does that leave us? No place good. But anyway, I just found that out today, so I wanted to talk about it because it was brand new and burning a hole in my brain, kind of like all of this stuff. When are we going to get over ourselves? I mean, seriously, when are people going to stop being so self-important that they think it's their duty to go after other people for the work they've done, or the thoughts they have, or the books that they've written? Find people that really commit crimes, that really harm their fellow man and women. Go after those people, not people that write children's books because of your perceived whatever it is. Messaging. Ugh. Stick it up your ass. Seriously. Anyway, just what I was thinking about today. It's really annoying. I feel like I should just sit on my doorstep and go, hey, why doesn't everybody come in here and look at my movie collection, and you just take all the movies out that offend you? Because, gosh, I shouldn't have them. Ugh. Drives me crazy. Let's start here. This comes from Paul Goulart. Paul says, hello, Robert Meyer Burnett. We met a few years ago in Fort Collins. Oh, I loved going to Fort Collins. I went to the a convention in Fort Collins. I was a guest of honor with Gigi Edgley, and it was Richard Hatch. And he wasn't feeling well, and he thought he just had stomach problems. But it was great. We met a few years ago in Fort Collins, and you've recently made a part of my day as I'm just enjoying my afternoons with your shows every day. Even my son has been amazed with some of the work you've shared and shown us over the years that I've watched. I love my wife and cherish every movie she enjoys. However, she isn't keen on science fiction at all. Although, there are films that I introduced her to that she simply loved. My son loves the same films and television shows that I enjoy. Over a year ago, I put together a 360 VR film that most viewers have stated is very innovative and a new way of thinking that most professionals in architects, realtors, and engineers should consider utilizing to their present designs and ideas to a client. Architecture in the Dome was already shown in a few international film festivals, as well as recognized as a favorite presentation by the local film festival organizers, as it was one of 5 films most talked about throughout the festival. This film was influenced by the love and care that Robert, you expressed in your films, YouTube shows, and the Comic-Con you presented here in Fort Collins. Well, I think you're giving me too much credit, but I appreciate that. Therefore, I want to thank you for the success of my first film. I'm currently planning on evolving this film into something special and to be shown to architects across the country in numerous Dome Theater-related international film festivals that already expressed interest in seeing more of this. You've turned me into a true imagination connoisseur, and I thank you greatly for that. Without the group's nature of loving genre film and the content it brings to our hearts and sharing those experiences with each other, I don't think great content will continue to be evolved for all of us to enjoy as movie fans. Once again, thank you for starting the Post-Geek Singularity. Now, my question to you is this. With now with things like COVID protocols, cancel culture, Black Lives Movement, Black Lives Matter, Me Too, etc., how can we leave politics out of our movie-going experience? It seems like there are far extreme sides clouding our minds in regards to behind the scenes that should not reflect our viewing pleasure in these films. In Mulan, there was a political statement that questioned the integrity of an actress and not for what she brought to the film itself. Russell Crowe has done wonderful performances throughout his lifetime, but his personal physical reactions with the in-the-face fans that approach him has gotten in the way from his films doing well at the box office. Recently, the whole issue with Gina Carano has placed the two political sides against each other instead of caring about the future of the show itself and what integrity of the films that Disney puts out for their family-oriented audience. One of the reasons that the Oscars has now deterred me from watching the show itself is because during several key speeches throughout the show has involved hatred towards a current president or heat towards a political view or even a new movement. I can wish politics can be placed aside from viewing great genre films. I want to see more experiences that I have witnessed over the years in theaters and continue to share them with my son. Perhaps it is to feel the laughter of the audience go through as you watch a funny scene in Something About Mary. Perhaps it is the feeling you had when you first witnessed that a man can fly in Superman the movie. Or, like my son has already witnessed for himself, on how to dance through chaos as Baby Groot, or how Aquaman became my son's favorite superheroes. Favorite superhero. These experiences build memories, and politics just builds problems for these positive experiences to happen. Best regards, Paul Goulart. Sorry, I was not my best reading your article, sir, Paul, because I was still fired up, and I picked this letter to start with because it sort of speaks to the same thing. I do not understand the idea of taking politics completely out of our discussions, because many movies and much storytelling is about politics. Star Wars, a movie about a rebellion against an evil empire, a rebellion against a government. If you look at Braveheart, same kind of thing. Gladiator, totally about being rebellious to the scary powers that be. There's politics in many, many stories. What I think people are objecting to, and if I understand what you're saying, what you are objecting to here, is that we are allowing our personal politics to spill over into other realms. For instance, whether somebody wanted to vote Democrat or Republican should not interfere with the ability to watch Blade Runner. I think Blade Runner, and I'll tell you something else. When you watch Blade Runner, or pick your favorite movie, but I'll just pick Blade Runner because it was the first thing that popped into my mind. After seeing Blade Runner, if I were to sit down at a table and have a conversation with friends of mine about Blade Runner, I would love it if I was sitting with a group of different, disparate political schools of thought. If I was going to have a discussion about Blade Runner afterwards, I would want somebody that's Republican. I would want somebody that's conservative. I would want a Democrat. I might want a libertarian. I certainly would want people of different religious denominations, because Blade Runner is inherently a story about the sanctity of life, what it means to be a human being, whether or not it was ethical to kill replicants, to retire replicants. And I think having a discussion about Blade Runner is made far more interesting if we all bring different ideologies to the table. Now, we're not going to be having a discussion about the current political climate. We're going to be having a discussion about the morals and the ethics of the entire Blade Runner unit, or whether or not replicants have souls. And I think that's a crucial discussion point when you're talking about Blade Runner. Now, here's the thing. Is it possible to have these mature adult conversations about a movie with differing political ideologies all sitting at the table? I say, yes, it is. As a matter of fact, the reason that Rod Serling and Gene Roddenberry were doing the kinds of things that they were doing within the context of a fantasy show is what that did was when people thought, okay, this is a science fiction show that takes place in the future, or it's a speculative fantasy show like Twilight Zone is, so I know when I'm watching something like The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, it's not real, So people of differing political ideologies could watch that show and be engaged by it without getting angry. I think what the problem is now is that, again, there is a lack of maturity on our parts. And suddenly we all want to browbeat everyone with our points of view, whether it's cancel culture, whether it's being so divisive about your political ideology. Look, I've said on my show many times that it was surprising to me that my mother wanted to vote for Donald Trump, growing up in a Jewish household that skewed heavily Democratic. But when she told me, rather than get angry with my mom, because I obviously wasn't going to vote for Donald Trump, but when my mom told me, she's a one-issue voter. She's 81 years old. She doesn't exactly, how many more issues is she supposed to have? She wants to enjoy what life she has left. And what's going to allow her to do that is if her mutual funds and investments yield the most return, because that's her only source of income. And during the Trump administration, she made more money. And so when I heard that, I'm like, rather than get mad at my mom and scream and yell at her and go, how can you vote for Donald Trump? Mom, that's crazy. You voted Democrat your whole life. My mom's like, look, I need my money to live. Under the Trump administration, I made more money. In my mom's mind, that's all she needed to know. My mom's been a pragmatist her whole life. If I wanted to talk about human rights issues, if I wanted to talk about affairs with women or payoffs, my mom wouldn't care. She's like, what does that matters? How does that matter to my mind, to my life? All that matters is how much money I have left to support myself for the rest of my life. That's it. And I think what's really happened in this country is we are immature. We all need to grow up a bit, and we need to be able to have conversations with one another without them letting them to degenerate into ridiculous, we're hurling rocks at one another because of our differing political ideologies. We have to become adults. And we have to learn how to be able to have conversations with people and not let it boil down into one issue or one thing or because, I think most of us, if we really think about it, if we get down to brass tacks, we have a lot more in common with one another than we have differences with one another. And I'll tell you something. I know for a fact, if something happened in your neighborhood, if your house caught on fire, and you were surrounded, your neighborhood was full of people of different color, racial makeups, religious ideologies, sexualities. I'll bet you if your house was on fire, everybody would come out and be offering aid, and nobody would ask you what your belief system is. Everybody would sit down and go, how do we get your family out of this house? How do we save as much of your belongings from this fire? What can we do? Let me turn on the hose. Let me see if my hose can stretch from my yard before the fire department gets here to your yard. I honestly believe that. I've seen it in my own life. We have forgotten this. We have forgotten that we are far more alike, all of us, than we are different. And this idea that we are allowing ourselves to slide into the muck of it's bad. And it's also immature. It's not the world that I certainly was growing up in. I can't believe it's the world I found myself in. But, people even criticize me all the time for talking to people that, well, how can you talk to that person? Because they're a human being. Because we share common interests. Do I have to love everything everybody does? No, I don't. But for the time being, when I'm interacting with somebody, I can enjoy what we both like together. I can find common ground, and maybe I can learn something from somebody. Maybe they can learn something from me. I just don't understand this, and I think it's great to hear. First of all, congratulations on your film. And I think you're right. I am tired of how all of these conversations are degenerating and how people want to bring... look, we should be able to talk politics, but we should also be able to talk about the things we love without talking about our personal politics. Like when you're talking about Blade Runner, your belief or your understanding of the movie is absolutely going to be shaped by your political ideology. But I don't need to hear you give me a treatise on how you feel about the current political system or the current people in politics when we're discussing whether or not it's legitimate to, first of all, make replicants, to take away their rights, and to retire them. Those are all moral quandaries and ethical concerns that are shaped by political ideology. or religious ideology or whatever, but we should be able to talk Blade Runner without, letting the conversation deteriorate. That's what mature adults can do. And I feel like our whole culture is being infantilized, and I don't get it. I don't understand. You know what? Every person's not special. The universe is indifferent to your suffering. And one day, an asteroid might hit this planet, and all of bets are off. And all of that cancel culture and that political ideology and all you're going to do is want to run away from that wave that's been caused, that 1,000-foot tall tsunami that's coming after you at 700 miles an hour, like in Deep Impact. Are we going to get up to the high ground? That's all that's going to matter. And we should remember that day may never come, but when it does, only the people that help one another run faster or pick them up when they are going to be the ones that survive, man. We have to learn how to speak to one another. And I have to say that I love your letter. And I don't remember when we were so politically apart like this, that we couldn't talk to one another. To me, it's very weird. But listen, I really loved going to Fort Collins. I had a terrific time there. I would recommend it to anyone. It was really a wonderful place. And I have to tell you, that Fort Collins convention was a local completely fan-run concern. It wasn't done by an outside agency, and I had more fun. It was very heartwarming to see all the people I met at Fort Collins up there, and I met some great people. The people that brought me up there, I'm Facebook friends with all of them, and it was great. I love that convention, and it reminded me what I grew up going to, which was these fan-run conventions, and to see multi-generations of people like yourself bringing your son, bringing your whole family. It was great. I loved it. And that's what I grew up a part of. Like, we'd go to conventions and, like you said, politics didn't really come into it. And I don't know why that has become such a thing. I mean, I get it, but it's sort of, I feel like you. It's unfortunate. Does it have to be that way? Does it? I mean, really? Can we not? It's not just can we all just get along. It's can we all not just have a mature discussion with one another? Why has that become so difficult? I mean, to me it's quite odd. I don't understand it. But anyway, thanks for writing in. What a great letter. I appreciate that, Paul. And congratulations on the film. See, you made something. You've done something that sounds to me to be quite groundbreaking. So kudos to you. I think that's what life's really all about. So yeah, I think that's good. This one comes from Jonathan J.K. Hi, Rob. I am writing to you to share my thoughts on this issue of canceling others and getting to cancel others when we measure people on one aspect. And this is in regards to Ben Shapiro. You brought the conversation to us well, and you're right by highlighting how one video shouldn't be used as a smoking gun to discredit the entirety of one person. Measuring people by one aspect is what allowed Ben Shapiro to be unironically labeled as a Nazi, which is fucking wild. I want to keep this brief. I supported Ben Shapiro in the beginning, but came to change my mind when I learned there were more silly things he said than sensible ones. And even though he carries himself as someone who believes in facts over feelings, he seems to choose the facts he likes. Overall, his views aren't particularly thought-provoking, and I let free of my timeline by simply unfollowing. Then the BBC interview. Ben got upset and called the British presenter a liberal when anybody in the UK would know the presenter is our flavor of right-wing. Simply put, Ben Shapiro had become the college students he debated that made him internet famous. But I don't dislike the guy. I won't hate him or cancel him in my mind. I make it a policy to never block people on Twitter. This lets me still see his tweets that make sense. Ben knows something about being Jewish after all. So Ben supporting Gina Carano makes sense. It undermines the outrage directed at Gina, the hypocrisy of Disney, who folds so easily in front of a mob. This should have meant something to observers, and I didn't see the mob checking themselves, nor did I see a single retraction against Gina when Ben stood by her. We have got to have nuance when the people we deal with and measure them on every issue, but not just one. But I think people know deep down the world is complicated and have a natural need to simplify things. But having said all that, this isn't the point I want to discuss. What I'm fascinated by at the moment are people like the reader who are going to stop watching you and all the hours of content that you provide because you said some nice things about Ben Shapiro. That reader is leaving your community after listening to hours and hours and hours of discussion because of this single issue. Logically, it being entirely self-limiting, how can anyone function in this manner and not compromise their beliefs if followed to their logical conclusion? I have to wonder if they actually listened to your nuanced views and thought deeply about the open-minded things that you say. I've only been listening to you for about 50 episodes from your podcast, but the things you say are nutritional to me. I like that. Things I say are nutritional. I've actually thought that about what other people say, but I've never seen it articulated before. But in the case of this other person's actions toward you, what does this say about the value of long-term engagement with people of interest on social media? I see this person punishing themselves by leaving. As you mentioned in the mail, you've mentioned Ben Shapiro in 2 episodes out of 626. How does that even compute that you would extract yourself from the group? Are your views that painful to them? During the height of Black Lives Matter, an IG fitness lady I follow, Instagram, fitness lady I follow, posted a black square. That lady was told by hundreds of accounts they were unfollowing her. She didn't care, I have to add, but nothing changed on her timeline other than posting that one black square. And a big podcaster last year who wears his politics front and center makes regular cross-cultural observations between the societies of the U.S. and Spain. His views are very critical of the USA, mostly government, and how people treat one another, but it's backed up by his informed opinion. Listeners should know what to expect from him, and he is, in my opinion, valid and informed in his societal discourse, as you are in pop culture. Well, one episode he mentioned the importance of wearing masks, and his listeners went so far as to cancel their Patreon and rage tweet at him because of this one single thing. I was surprised because it was entirely predictable that he would say such a thing. I sat here questioning how the value of creator-fan relationships can be so easily compromised, and what does it say about us all when we not only dismiss these people we don't like, but also those we do like and obviously enjoy, but now no longer want to because of one single issue. Thoughts on this, please? Well, Jonathan J.K., I want to say thank you. People are complex individuals. They like many different things. And I think that's what makes us great. I mean, one of the things on this channel, I've met people that like lots of crazy stuff. Like today, if you didn't watch it, on Let's Get Physical Media, I only purchased 2. That's right, 2 discs this week for my collection. The first was the movie Pump Up the Volume with Christian Slater, Happy Hard Harry. This came out from Warner Archive. I love this movie. I think it's a great film. Alan Moyle did a terrific job writing and directing this movie. I thought Samantha Mathis as the Eat Me Beat Me lady was terrific, and Happy Hard Harry, Christian Slater, a legend. This film probably spoke to a lot of teenagers, and I think today it probably still does. You know what the other disc I bought was? The 4K version of the X-rated Sex World. That's right. I bought a 4K X-rated 70s porn film that's a parody of Westworld. By the way, from Vinegar Syndrome, great package, a 3-disc set. And this also comes with the R-rated softcore version. Now, look at this cover. This artwork. I'm sure somebody would say, that's offensive. Oh my God, Rob, how could you buy that, especially after you've bought Pump Up the Volume? What do buying those 2 things say to us about you? Well, they would say that I think they would, that my interests are wide and varied. And I think it's really interesting There are two science fiction pornographic films that I particularly loved. Sex World was, well, actually there was three that were X-rated: Flesh Gordon, Sex World, and Cafe Flesh. Cafe Flesh is not available on Blu-ray or 4K, I don't think. But if it ever did come out on 4K, I'd buy that too. Now, I think human beings, if you live on this planet, you should be multifaceted and interested in a lot of different things. If someone's going to hate me because I mentioned Ben Shapiro once, I mean, I watch Ben Shapiro's movie reviews of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and things like that. And yes, he's got a conservative bent to him, and yes, he's an Orthodox Jew. So I find his existence fascinating. I feel I can learn from him. Sometimes I think what he says is bunk. But the fact that somebody, because I would listen to Ben Shapiro, it's not like he's not a public figure. I mean, he's out there. You can't be on the internet or read the news without coming across a mention of Ben Shapiro. And the fact that he got involved in the entertainment industry space and is going to distribute movies and then make movies with Gina Carano, I would certainly be remiss in terms of knowing what pop culture is all about and certainly working in Hollywood if I did not acknowledge what the Daily Wire as becoming a distributor could mean to the industry. Like, why wouldn't I do that? I don't know. If somebody wants to hate me for that, well, they can. I understand that. I wasn't supporting Ben Shapiro. I was just reporting on something that happened. I think it's odd. I don't understand how human beings that have many different facets and all different interests, how is it that they are somehow treated this way? I don't get it. I guess it's because if you grew up in a generation where you had no hardship and you were told, I don't know if it's that every kid gets a trophy thing, that people grew up that way. Maybe they needed to read a little bit more history. I don't understand. It's crazy. Just a Brown Girl writes us. I love Just a Brown Girl. I love hearing from her. Hey, Rob, happy weekday. Well, as it turns out, no, it's the weekend. I have an update and 2 shares. Sorry, neither is especially skewed for the continuing genre discussion that your audience tunes in for, but I promised to keep you posted. So I've sent 4 Snookies baskets out, and I'm told they've been delivered before noon each day. But when I called to follow up, crickets. I know we're living through a pandemic at the moment, and I understand that most people are working from home these days. The biggest problem is not that they don't receive the cookies. The biggest problem is that 3 out of 4 recipients don't know about the package at all. I can see an agent gifting food to whoever is on site, but to have mail disappear entirely, it's disappointing. At best, the mailroom crew is eating the food and tossing the letter. At worst, they're denying receipt of anything, and my Amazon gift cards are being tossed in the garbage. Actually, I don't know which would be worse. I'm taking this week off to give the COVID numbers time to fall. I'm going to relaunch in March. I only posted 1 video to my YouTube channel. I'm trying very hard not to be too precious about things. To punch fear in the face and punch perfection in the face. But it's hard. You're going to hear me say this a lot, but you never have a second chance at a first impression. It went live at noon today for interested parties. The link is here. Ooh, this is Just a Brown Girl's YouTube link. Let's check this out. Here it goes. I can't wait to watch this. You were talking about Zack Snyder this week and the pitfalls of calling oneself an artist. I can relate. I wanted to share this I got on Facebook Valentine's Day weekend. I'm pretty sure the writer won't mind, so I'm going to cut and paste the message in its entirety. It reads, "Hello, Michelle. Always think about you, as you gave me my first SAG voucher and even contacted SAG when they did not record it. I've not worked since September, but unexpectedly, I've received my first very substantial SAG residual checks, as well as several smaller checks. As a 74-year-old background actor in 2020, it was my second best earnings year. Thanks for getting me started. I hope your career is doing well. Be safe." This letter is from Herv, an extra on my film Better Half. It was a split day where we were stealing shots in public in the morning and doing location work in the afternoon. So I was working with a skeleton crew of camera, makeup, the director, me, and however many extras showed up to flank my talent in the street and subway scenes. I guess I share this to say that a good director is a good director, and you can tell by the way past crew and cast respond to them. I love that I gave people the Taft-Hartley that got them into SAG, even if sparring with SAG through the process was a drag. I love when crew hook up and do projects together because they met because of me. That feels great. Being a good director is hard. You have to be a manager and a creative. You have to consider everything all the time while still giving enough attention or guidance to this person or that department at the right time. It sounds like Snyder was good for as long as it lasted. This letter is meandering, so what am I trying to say? I'm saying it's great when people get to realize their vision or their dream, just like Herv with his SAG card or like Zack Snyder with the new and improved Justice League. You mentioned that being a brown girl should be of help to me at this particular moment in the industry. But it doesn't. It never has. That's just the narrative sold to the fair-weathered zeitgeist. I'm personally of the belief that studio diversity programs are only there so the gatekeepers can hand an opportunity to the people of color they already know, and point to that as compliance. It's the only way I can explain to myself how a director with my experience can't get a phone call returned or a gift basket acknowledged, while boutique agencies continue to hire folks that have a quarter of the resume that I do. It is the plight of brown girls like myself to be overqualified and largely invisible. I am the perpetually prepared brown girl hoping to get lucky. Okay, now I'm whining. Let's go back. If it's true that wealth and means only augment what is already there, be it goodness, venom, or avarice, I hope it has a blossoming effect on the creativity of Zack Snyder. More than ever, the importance of creative vision needs more good press, especially since the example of Kevin Feige has become transcendent. I hope Justice League blows the doors off this town, and I say that as a mildly curious DCU lurker. Every creative should hope for the success of Justice League. The success of this new iteration could hopefully make space for other creatives, other dreamers, to imagine in scope, in childlike wonder, and with confidence. Because maybe, just maybe, you, me, each of us, all of us, will get our turn. Thanks for letting me ramble. I am Just a Brown Girl. Well, Just a Brown Girl, you remain one of my favorite people that I have never met. And maybe one day you and I could work on something together and screw all those people that don't return even a thank you to getting a nice gift basket. By the way, I'm not beyond getting one myself. I'm just saying. I'd call you. What a great letter. See, this is why I love this community. I swear to God, this is the best community on it's the best community on YouTube, I swear. This comes from Alex. Alex says, "Hey Rob, I discovered you through the John Campea show about a year and a half ago while searching for clips about the latest Spider-Man movie, Far From Home. I liked your personality and opinions, and I found out you had your own channel, which I now follow pretty religiously. I like it when people take their time and discuss different topics in a laid-back, analytic fashion, while also injecting just the right amount of passion, energy, and emotion. Because what the heck? Ultimately, that's the driving force behind all of us. As a kid growing up in Bucharest, Romania, we never really had comic books. You may know that we were a communist country until 1989, so there was a limited supply of Western culture available here. We had some American movies, the tentpole productions, some TV shows like Dallas, Mannix, and Bewitched, but as the 1980s rolled on, we only had 2 hours of TV a day, so we basically had no content to consume. VHS tapes started coming here in the 90s, but at the time it was pretty expensive for the average guy. Comic books never really existed here. But I was born in 1995, so I had it easier. I loved Batman as a kid because there were some cartoons of it on TV and also the Michael Keaton movies. I had no idea who Spider-Man was until the year 2000, when Fox Kids and Cartoon Network became available, and I got to watch Spider-Man, the animated series from the 90s. I've loved movies all my life, and though I'm 26 now, I think I've seen over 600. Sure, that's probably nothing compared to your numbers, but for me it's something I'm somewhat proud of. Strangely enough, however, for a guy my age, I mostly appreciate older movies. I don't try and be a hipster or appear interesting, I just enjoy them more. don't get me wrong, I watch new movies all the time. And before this pandemic happened, I used to go to the cinema 20 or 30 times a year. Last time in March of 2020 when I saw Onward. But most current movies I just consider, meh, too politically correct and desperate to appeal to everyone. Fine to watch once in a movie theater, but very few that will stand the test of time. And so my personal top 3 movies would be Sunset Boulevard, Some Like It Hot, and Casablanca, which I've seen over 20 times. Amen, Alex. Which also introduces my question to you. I've rarely seen you talk about Billy Wilder and his work on your show. What's your opinion of him? I think he's ridiculously underrated. Ask most people today who he was and they will have no clue. Repeat the question, but replace Wilder with Alfred Hitchcock, and everyone has seen 1 or 2 movies of his. How is that? Anyway, thanks for everything you do. I know you probably hear this a lot, but your channel and work make a positive difference in the lives of many who, for 1 or 2 hours a day, get to evade all that's going on in their lives and focus on nicer, more pleasant things. Lots of appreciation, Alex. Well, Alex, what a nice letter to receive. Thank you for that. By the way, I don't know Alex. I didn't make Alex write this letter, but it's certainly appreciated. So, Billy Wilder, one of the greatest film directors and also writers of all time. And we've seen a lot, of course, of his films. Now, he was Austrian born. He was born in 1906. But let me go back through here and let's talk about some of Billy Wilder's movies. Now, a lot of them I have not seen, but some of them we talked about on Whining About Movies, like Double Indemnity, which is, if you haven't seen Double Indemnity, it's one of the greatest of the film noirs ever made, which he did a lot of. Now, it's funny because Double Indemnity was, he wrote Double Indemnity and directed Double Indemnity. And I'm going to go through some of my favorite, Billy Wilder movies that I love. Now, Double Indemnity is from 1944, but I'm just going to go through. I mean, like, he started writing movies in 1929. Now, these are movies that he wrote as a writer. The Bad Seed was one of them. Ninotchka, which is a great movie. Double Indemnity, The Lost Weekend, A Foreign Affair, A Song is Born, not A Star is Born, but A Song is Born, Sunset Boulevard, Ace in the Hole, Stalag 17, Sabrina, The 7-Year Itch, The Spirit of St. Louis, Witness for the Prosecution, Some Like It Hot. I already said that, didn't I? Oh, no. Some Like It Hot. And The Apartment, Ocean's 11, but he was uncredited. Irma La Douce. I mean, guy's amazing. The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. And that was Christopher Lee was in that movie. But as a director, he directed movies up till 1981, where he directed Buddy Buddy. His movies in the 70s were not so good. But and I think The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes was the last movie he made that I loved. But if you go and you look at his movies that he directed, Double Indemnity, The Lost Weekend, A Foreign Affair, Sunset Boulevard, Ace in the Hole, Stalag 17, Sabrina, The 7-Year Itch, Spirit of St. Louis, Some Like It Hot, Witness for the Prosecution, The Apartment are all movies that I own. So I'm a huge fan. I think Billy Wilder is one of the most talented writer-directors of the time. Joseph Mankiewicz is another favorite of mine who wrote All About Eve. So yes, I'm a huge, huge fan of Billy Wilder. There's still a lot we can all learn. By the way, I love hearing that as someone in their mid-20s that these are your favorite movies. And I think I know why. Because the thing is, while older movies are not necessarily as cinematic as new films in terms of, technique, cinematography, direction, they're much more literary than the movies that we get today. And if you like characters and words, and you like you talked about Sunset Boulevard and Casablanca. I mean, these are some of the great screenplays ever written, and so I think that that's one of the reasons that you love these movies. And Sunset Boulevard and Some Like It Hot, in terms of character development, humor, and black humor in the case of a dark humor, I don't want to be considered a racist. What would you call it? I mean, somebody will get mad at me for saying, I think, like, we know what black comedy is, and it's not a Spike Lee joint. I'm talking about Sunset Boulevard, Doctor Strangelove, things like that. But Sunset Boulevard and Some Like It Hot are hilariously funny. Sunset Boulevard is dark. Sunset Boulevard is also a tremendous look at Hollywood and what it does to people. And Casablanca is one of the great movies, one of the great stories. I mean, in a way, Casablanca is kind of Shakespearean. I think it'll stand the test of time forever. So I want to thank you for writing that in. This next letter comes from DC. Greetings, Rob, and the Post-Geek Singularity. Please allow me to introduce myself. My name is DC, and I'm writing this, my first letter to you, from the lockdown wasteland that is the UK. I'd like to tell you and the Post-Geek Singularity how much this community and your content means to me, specifically Robservations. To do so, however, I need to put things into some context. I first discovered Robservations one night in May of 2020. I remember that night so clearly that I can remember what episode it was, and it was Season 2, episode number 403. I don't even remember what episode that was. I remember this so clearly because no less than 3 hours before watching the episode, I stared watching 5 minutes or so after it started, my ex-girlfriend of 3 years decided to break up with me. Man, I was in 2 different states of emotion at the time. I was, of course, upset, but I was also emotional because I was extremely relieved. You may wonder why I was relieved, so I'll try and explain it the best way I can and not throw in every detail. My ex-girlfriend was very controlling and would often become terribly violent. I won't go into details because, as we have seen with Johnny Depp over the last few years, when men speak out against domestic abuse committed by the hands of the opposite sex, we're not often believed. I'm sure we all know the reasons as to why that is, so I won't go into them here. My ex was so controlling to the point that I hadn't watched any of the sci-fi and fantasy movies and shows I grew up loving and still love today. I did manage to see The Rise of Skywalker in the movie theater, however, only because my ex's brother was going to see it and invited me to go along. My ex didn't want me to go, but reluctantly she allowed me to. The only form of entertainment I enjoy that I did get to watch often during that 3 years was horror movies and horror shows, as she was a fan of horror also, but that was it. Some will wonder why I stayed in that relationship for as long as I did. To put it bluntly, I was 20 when I got together with my ex, and she was my unrequited middle school sweetheart. And as is my first serious relationship, I was madly in love, and even when things started getting dark after the first 7 months, I was of the opinion that this was just a brief bump in the road, and that it would be the first of many. Love is the son of a bitch for that kind of thing, am I right? But I also lived with her, 80 miles away from my parents and other family, from whom she had cut me off. And although I was planning to leave her by November 2019, I had to plan it carefully with help from my dad, who I'd managed to keep in occasional contact with. When things came to a head one evening, I returned to my mother's house for 2 weeks in the hopes that some time apart would help the relationship. Unfortunately, it didn't. Things, in fact, only got worse. I began to suspect that my ex had cheated on me upon my return. Spoiler alert, she was indeed having an affair from the second week of that 2-week breakup to the day she broke up with me. But by March of 2020, when I was at the end of my rope and desperate to end the relationship without becoming trapped 80 miles away from my parents with all my possessions, I had a way out. My cousin unfortunately passed away after falling into a diabetic coma, and I, of course, would be attending the funeral. Again, I thought, despite all the signs that it would give us another couple of weeks apart to help the relationship. When I arrived at my mom's house to stay that weekend, the UK COVID lockdown went into force, and I've remained in my home county ever since. The relationship continued long distance until that night in May, when she decided that things were not working and ended the relationship. She did, however, remain reasonable about my possessions, and we made arrangements for me to retrieve them when lockdown was eased enough to allow for that kind of travel. I realized, only after being an emotional wreck for an hour, that I was free. I could be who I really was now, and I didn't have to pretend to be something I wasn't to make sure I wouldn't end up in an argument and a fight with the woman I loved. I want to stress, by the way, that I never laid a hand on her. Such a thought never crossed my mind. In short, I could be the geek I had always been again. Of course, since the start of my extended stay at my mother's house in my childhood bedroom, no less, I'd been catching up on the pop culture I'd missed out on and had been reconnecting with the fandoms I was a part of. I rediscovered some of the YouTubers I'd started watching after the disaster of storytelling that is The Last Jedi hit theaters. On the night that relationship ended, I was searching YouTube aimlessly for a live stream to watch. Robservations episode 403 popped up in my recommendations, and I decided to tune in. And I was hooked from the first minute I watched. I enjoyed the show and subscribed, and the next Robservations I saw was Season 2, Episode 406. And this one also holds a special place in my heart, as this episode I watched with my mom. My mom had become concerned about me for obvious reasons, and I wanted to make sure I didn't spend the entire day alone, so she joined me that evening and watched the entire episode of Robservations with me. And that episode holds such a special place in my heart for the simple fact that that night was the first night that my mom and I had watched something together from start to finish, since my mom sat me down when I was 7 years old to watch Star Wars Episode 4 New Hope for the first time. Oh my God. A movie she'd seen on the day of its UK release in 1977. I've been a Star Wars fan ever since. My mom had never been able to watch a film all the way through with me since then because my younger brother has autism, and she, as a single parent, had to focus almost all of her time into into caring for him, obviously. My mother, not being a geek, despite the opening weekend viewing of A New Hope, didn't have a clue about what you were talking about. But she did say that you were the right type of eye candy to keep her invested all the way through. Never wanted to hear that kind of thing from my mom. But does anybody? Oh, yes, we do. Come on, man. So tell your mom, all right. So I need to thank you, Rob, for creating an awesome internet show about movies and television that lead me to spending some long overdue quality time with my mom, and for helping me reconnect with the person that I really am. Since that viewing of Robservations 406, I've tuned in almost every episode since as it's streamed live to YouTube, and I've gone back and rewatched those I missed, and I've now seen all of Robservations Season 1, and I'm now at the time of this writing due to watch Episode 4 of Season 2. That's crazy. I'd like to thank you again, Rob, for giving me a place to come to where I get to see not only what you think, but also what other like-minded individuals think. Some of your opinions and the opinions of people that are part of the PGS have made me challenge my own opinions and have made me rethink some of them. I'd also like to thank you and all of the Post-Geek Singularity for sharing their geek origin stories in the letters that have been sent in and other stories of fandom that have been shared in this community. I feel like I've found my people again. I feel home. You and the PGS have made me laugh since I stumbled upon this community last May, and the stories told here have made me remember things I'd forgotten, like just how good Star Trek The Next Generation is, how great a movie Man of Steel is, and how great it is to be who I am. One thing I'm still hoping you and the Post-Geek Singularity can do is help me understand why Tarantino is considered one of the greatest directors of all time. The only movie of his I think is worth watching is Pulp Fiction. Hopefully, you and the PGS can help change my mind someday. I'm not active in the chat. Anxiety is a bitch, but I'm working up to it. I hope that you have room for me in this great community. Sorry for this letter being a long one, Rob. I just wanted to express how much you, this channel, and the Post-Geek Singularity mean to me in the only way that I could. I only hope you can understand how much it all means to me, even though I've explained it as poorly as I have. Writing letters is not my strong suit. Writing fiction is. Rob, you're a legend. Never change. Thank you, Post-Geek Singularity. You're all legends, and you never change. And may the Force be with all of you, always. Well, DC, what a great letter. How can I not love this letter? I thought this was a great letter, and I thought you did a great job explaining everything that happened. I'm sorry that that you went through that, but chalk it up to a growth experience. And look, let me tell you, in the world these days, I grew up at a time, if you want to find what we would like to call geek girls or women that share your interests, they're everywhere. And they're looking for somebody just like you, somebody thoughtful, introspective, and understands that it's okay to spend time with your mom and admit it publicly on YouTube. You're the man they want to find. And there's plenty of them out there. My God. I mean, I'm blown away by how the community has changed since I was a young man your age. But I want to thank you for writing in, and you're always welcome here. And get over that anxiety. People will welcome you, especially now that they've heard this story. You have how many people are here right now? There's 324 concurrent people in this stream. I bet all of them would welcome you with open arms, pat you on the back, pour your drink, at least virtually, if they could, preferably Jameson or whatever your favorite beverage of choice is. And, I would say, let me send your mom my email address, but Elizabeth would get mad, and I wouldn't want her to. But tell your mom thanks for me. And I can't tell you, you're the first person that's ever said they sat down with their mother to watch an episode of Robservations, and I thank you for that. So welcome. You've been here for a long time. I'm glad you're part of the community. And I will say this, what a great letter. And keep up with the fiction. Keep up with the fiction. I love that. That was great. Here we go. This comes from Phil. Hello, Rob, and the Post-Geek Singularity. Greetings from Yule, a.k.a. Montreal. I guess I'm writing this to share something some members might not be aware of yet, as I've not seen anyone talking about it, anyone meeting yourself and John Campea. So this week, a new Star tile appeared on Disney+, as was previously announced on the Disney December 2020 Investor Day. Interestingly, I'm reading that Star is only available outside of the U.S. It is, at least for now. I was curious to see how they would handle the adult content part of this offer. So it seems that after the app updated on my Roku, I was prompted to select and accept a content rating to filter content as appropriate. TVMA is all content, but there are other options. There's also a new option to add a pin to profiles. All in all, pretty simple. I, of course, started perusing the content and was kind of impressed. This ups the content value a lot for me anyway. However, I was kind of afraid that we would find ourselves in front of more censoring cases, recalling the famous Splash controversy from last year. Well, it turns out the very first featured choice when accessing Star is Deadpool. What a perfect test, as in violence, sexuality, and language. So I'm happy to say that the movie seemed totally uncut, which is good news. Anyway, I hope this outlet will be offered to everyone ASAP. Best regards, Phil. What Phil is talking about, in case his letter didn't make it clear, is that Disney Plus, which now has been incredibly family-friendly, has figured out a way to incorporate all of the R-rated content they've brought over from Fox, movies that are not traditionally Disney films. So there's a part of Disney Plus now which is called Star, I guess Disney Star, where you're going to have all of the R-rated fare and fare that wouldn't necessarily be considered Disney proper fare, but they've got all these great movies, and that's what that they want them streaming. So Star is a section of Disney Plus, and now, as Phil pointed out, you will be able to passcode it. So if you have kids that want to watch this kind of content, you can actually prevent them if they don't have the password, which is pretty great. Now, we don't have that in the U.S. I don't know when that's going to roll out here. I haven't actually heard, but it's pretty exciting that Disney Plus is going to add a ton of new content through Fox's entire catalog of films. And they already have some Fox movies like Sound of Music for obvious reasons, but it'll be interesting to get all that stuff. So thank you for writing in. I appreciate that. This one's pretty good. Ryan McLeod of the Clan McLeod. Ryan McLeod writes in and says, "Hi, Rob. Today, I'd like to talk about something I've been utilizing recently as a coping mechanism, if you will, for the various levels of quality across our beloved multimedia franchises. Today, I'd like to talk about headcanon. For anyone unfamiliar with the term, headcanon is the idea of personally disregarding aspects of a franchise's official canon. In more layman's terms, pretending certain movies or TV shows simply don't exist. A personal example of my headcanon is the ever-contentious Star Wars sequel trilogy. In my canon, episodes 7 through 9 are not included. Many people dislike everything Disney has produced until The Mandalorian and may exclude Solo and Rogue One from their headcanons, but I actually thought they were solid efforts, as did I. I see a lot of people online still extremely bitter, but the very existence of the sequel trilogy, praying for its removal from official canon. Theories online regarding this are very interesting and would be interesting viewing if it did materialize. However, I don't see this coming to fruition and would recommend people with such grievances to maintain some form of headcanon as an alternative. Hey, as long as The Mandalorian stays far from the Force Awakens time period, it'll be easy to maintain this. Until this point in my letter, a lot of people may already know what I'm talking about and already apply this to some degree. However, I'd like to suggest utilizing headcanon to justify content rather than exclude it. While this is probably a rarer application, it can be a way to enjoy content so that cast and crew, many worked hard to produce. My personal example of this is Season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. At the time of its debut, I remember thinking it was pretty okay for a new sci-fi fantasy show. It just wasn't good Star Trek. That's right. For the remainder of the season, it was pretty easy for me to pretend this was not in fact Star Trek Discovery I was watching, but simply a new show called Discovery. Given how little the show related to Star Trek, this was not a hard sell for my headcanon. However, when they announced Spock was coming to Season 2, I knew my time with Discovery was over, as it would make it difficult to ignore the ties to Trek at large. Still, I enjoyed Season 1 for what it was outside of main Trek canon. I was tempted to jump in for Season 3, given the storyline removes itself from the main Trek time period, but you've convinced me I need not waste my time. Listen, I don't want to be responsible for that. You should dip into it and see if you like Trek, see if you like it. You know, while it's an affront to everything I believe Star Trek is and should be, that doesn't mean, like you said, you can watch it and enjoy it for some things. My question to you, though, Rob, is this. To what extent do you utilize headcanon? Do you begrudgingly accept Bad Robot's interpretation of Star Trek as main canon? Or do you segregate new Trek from classic and the Berman-era Trek? Are there other franchises you apply headcanon to? You did write Ryan McLeod of the Clan McLeod. You wrote that at the end of your letter. 30, Scotland. Good question, Ryan. Why? Okay. I have a good answer for this, actually. So growing up, I read a lot of Star Trek novels. And there were a lot of Star Trek novels that I really liked. Like, for instance, I liked Spock Must Die, James Blish's only original Star Trek novel. It had a lot of canonical Star Trek things in it. I liked it. And it was funny because the idea of canon didn't yet exist. To me, I thought it was a cool Star Trek story when I was younger, and I just put it in my mind as, yep, that happened. I like that. So that's how I felt about that story. And so that's how I felt about that story. But it wasn't. And as I grew up and grew older reading Star Trek novels, like there were Star Trek novels in my mind, I'm just like, well, that happened. Diane Duane's The Wounded Sky, John Ford's The Final Reflection, Judith and Garfield Reeves Stevens' Prime Directive and Federation. Those happened in my mind. Peter David's Imzadi, Diane Duane's Spock's World. Those are just stories I thought were great Star Trek stories that happened. I love all the post-Dominion War novels that they've been putting out, or that they were putting out. Like Articles of the Federation was a book I really liked. I've always talked about my beloved David Mack, who I guess we can't really talk as much or converse as much because he's afraid that I'll out him and they'll have to know that a hater of modern Star Trek. Look, I wish everybody who works on Prodigy all the best. But I love David Mack's Star Trek books. I love his Mirror Universe duology. I love his Destiny trilogy, which is not only great science fiction and great Star Trek, but just great books. I like his Noonien Sung trilogy about all the Sung androids, the Cold Equations. I call it the Cold Equations trilogy just because I like that. I don't think it's really known as the Cold Equations trilogy, but that's the name of one of the books. All those books become headcanon to me. They are real Star Trek. There are certain comic stories that I put into my headcanon if I thought they belonged there. And yes, reading novels and reading comics, I know that those aren't canonical Star Trek stories. My problem with something like Star Trek Discovery is I think it's just bad. It's not even that it's bad Star Trek. It's just bad in general. There's nothing I like about There's nothing, and it's funny. I think hatred. Picard actually made me hate it more than Discovery makes me hate it, because Star Trek Picard is such a bastardization of the character of Jean-Luc Picard and Next Generation in general. I find the whole thing very difficult. I can't understand why it was made. I'm like, this is where you. And I understand Patrick Stewart was looking at Logan, which is such a great movie. Look at how the characters are treated in Logan. But I'm like, not a Star Trek story. And the story they told in Picard was not a great Picard story, and it certainly wasn't a good Star Trek story. And 2 negatives cancel it all out. But that's kind of what I do. And the funny thing about my Star Trek fandom was kind of based in the idea that everybody that was working in Star Trek, the comic book writers, the novelists, the people that were making blueprints, or Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise, and all the technical manuals, that everybody was working in canonical Star Trek. They were always going to the original series and they were taking things out. Like when you read the Reeve Stevens books, they do such a good job of weaving in Star Trek canonical history into their stories. Like in Federation, the character of Flint, I remember his character's name being Micah Brack, I think, because Flint has had many different names. But the fact that they worked Flint into their novel in such an interesting way, they gave you hundreds of years of backstory of the character of Flint for Requiem for Methuselah, who is a fascinating character. I just thought that was amazing. And they honored what was already existing and made it work within Star Trek canon. So I think one of the problems that I have with modern Star Trek is everybody, whether they're, yes, the Gold Key comics don't count because those people hadn't seen the show. But when you get into some of the DC comics, even the Marvel comics later on, like the early Voyages, the Pike comic, Star Trek Early Voyages, that everybody was kind of working, all the writers, the Star Trek novelists, they were all working within the paradigm of Star Trek, and they were trying to write great Star Trek stories. It has only been since 2009. My Star Trek fandom went from being 5 years old all the way up to 2009, where we finally, for the very first time, have people that were not working in Star Trek continuity. In fact, they were either rewriting their continuity or they saw it as a hindrance and moved around continuity. Star Trek Discovery, modern Star Trek, has no interest in canonical fealty to Star Trek as a storytelling framework. They just pick and choose and do what they want. And that's one of the reasons I have such a hard time with it all, is that the people that are making modern Star Trek, and have been since 2009, don't care about canonical fealty. And one of the cool things about Star Trek was, even with the extended universe, the comics, the books, the model kits, whatever it was, they weren't all perfect, but they tried to work within Star Trek continuity, which meant you had a great experience reading the best of the Star Trek novels because they would illuminate and offer more understanding of what was already there. And that was really cool. I love that. And modern Star Trek doesn't try and do that at all. So my fandom that was being served in a particular way is not being served at all. Like, I can't look at a spaceship, a starship design from Star Trek Discovery and reconcile it to any part of Star Trek from 1966 to 2005 when Enterprise went off the air. None of it makes sense. None of it works in Star Trek continuity. And I don't like that because I'm a starship freak. And I never thought the day would come when I never wanted to own any. At first, the NX-01 from Enterprise bothered me a little bit because it was 1/350th scale, and it's like the same size as the refit Enterprise. But you know what? I came to like that design, and it feels like it belongs in the Star Trek universe. But nothing in Star Trek Discovery or Star Trek Picard remotely belongs in the Star Trek universe. So that's kind of how I dispense with it. But I do like this idea that, headcanon is a big thing. What do you believe and what do you not believe? It's an important distinction for fans. Let's jump over and see what y'all are doing over here in the chat. I don't want to be scared. Am I going to be scared? I hope I'm not scared. Let's see. Let's go back to where we were at. There's people that, let's see how far back I go here. Calvin Bowes, Bunyan Snipe. Oh, you know what? I talked Bunyan Snipe. Calvin Bowes. Our friend Calvin says, when you saw Casino Royale, did it first throw you off that the movie started with no gun barrel? It felt like I came into the film late. In a way, it kind of did, but I understand what they were doing. The fact that it opened in black and white kind of it tipped me off. I mean, it was weird. To be honest, when I first walked out of Casino Royale, I didn't think I liked it that much. That has changed. But at first I was kind of like, I don't know. Now, of course, I love it. Calvin says, also, he goes on to say, Braxton, is he 6 now? Is Braxton 6 now? Braxton just watched his first silent movie, Phantom of the Opera, and he thought it was great, and he wants to know if you have seen it and what you thought of it. I have seen Phantom of the Opera, and of course it's great. It's great. Now you have to show him Nosferatu. Yeah, see if he likes that. Nosferatu. And you have to show him Metropolis. Show him Metropolis. See, I bet he'll love Metropolis. Calvin says, this Thursday the 4th is Braxton's birthday, and he will be 6. Oh, my God. Will you do something special on your show for him that day? I will. You have to remind me again, but we'll do something special for Braxton on the occasion of his 6th birthday. Because, you sent me videos of Braxton. That's a very cool thing. I think that Braxton is a foundational member of this community, and he's our youngest imagination connoisseur, and his birthday is absolutely worth celebrating. Gary Allegra Jr. sends in a tip and says, I already read that today. Emma Bannon, I read that today too. And these are for today. Chloe says, when watching a horror movie, what type of horror do you prefer? Your basic jump scare scenes, or the feeling that you know that it's there, with the movie giving you a gradual build-up, giving you the feeling of it being around every corner? The build-up. Chloe, I think I prefer, most of all, intellectual horror. When I was young, my favorite horror film directors were David Cronenberg, John Carpenter, and George Romero. And I think all of them incorporated, even when Carpenter made like Halloween, there was an intellectual, there's even a teacher talking about fate in the classroom. But especially Cronenberg's brand of body horror, I love that. I love that kind of build-up sense of dread. I mean, some of my favorite horror movies are Rosemary's Baby. I was on a Clubhouse chat last night. I was even brought up to the stage. Dave Parker and Jason Adam and they're a married couple that work in horror. It was really Darren Bousman from the Saw franchise. He was in that room. We were all talking about Rosemary's Baby, and it's one of my favorite horror films, and there isn't any necessarily overt jump scares or anything like that. It's just a sense of dread and horror of what happens and human betrayal. I mean, one of the things about Rosemary's Baby is you have maybe the worst betrayal of a husband of his wife, betraying his wife in all of cinema history. John Cassavetes as Guy, and Luther, and nobody loves an albatross. I mean, Guy, oh my God, stands back and allows a coven to bring Satan up from the depths of hell to have his way, with Rosemary Woodhouse. Guy Woodhouse stands by and watches as his wife is ravaged by Satan himself, who deposits his seed in her, and stands by while his wife carries the son of Satan to term. He's got to be the worst husband in all of human history, certainly in all of cinema history, by God. So I prefer that. I like the intellectual slow burn. But then again, I do like the gore and the violence and the true horror. Chloe goes on to say, in your opinion, would Halloween 3 Season of the Witch work better as a TV show on its own rather than trying to be made into movies? Even though it has a cult following, Michael Myers is the Halloween movies, where the third movie should have been on television. Well, the thought was back then was they were going to make an anthology series. They were going to turn Halloween into every Halloween they would make a new movie that approached things differently. And it changed. I mean, obviously that changed after Halloween 3. I think the franchise was sold and then John Carpenter was not involved, and then he was involved, but no, I like Halloween 3. I think Halloween 3 is a terrific little movie. I've always loved it. I saw it in the theater when it opened. Willow says, Willow's here and says, if you were in Worf's position in Change of Heart, where you have to choose between saving someone you love or finish a mission that can potentially save millions of lives, what would you have done? The needs of the many? Well, Willow, as a Starfleet officer, I think I would have to go with the needs of the many. I mean, as much as that as much as that might be painful, you have to save as many people as you can as a member of Starfleet. I mean, obviously you try to do both, but I think that I would go with trying to save as many people as possible. Jeff Yerke and Mrs. Yerke are here. Hello, the two of you. The Y squared today. Hi, Rob. I'm so fatigued by cancel culture that I just want to scream. Dr. Seuss? Really? Really? This shit makes me want to throw up my arms and scream, you know where you're going, Alice? To the moon, Alice, to the moon. Live long and prosper. You know what? Ralph Cramden, it's only a matter of time before Ralph Cramden is canceled for his treatment or even suggesting that. It's coming. You'll see. Alexander Wilson's here. Alexander says, America has buried history before. Many people didn't know the Tulsa Massacre actually happened until they saw it on Watchmen. Spare me, America has been burying history since its birth. In Alabama, they say in textbooks, slavery was good. Yeah, it's amazing. Alexander goes on to say, Dr. Seuss books have not been banned in Loudoun County Public Schools, LCPS. LCPS believes that rumor started because March 2nd is Read Across America Day. Schools in LCPS and across the country have historically connected Read Across America Day with Dr. Seuss's birthday. Research in recent years has revealed strong racial undertones in many books written and illustrated by Dr. Seuss. Given this research and LCPS focus on equity and culturally responsive instruction, LCPS has provided guidance to schools in the past couple of years to not connect Read Across America Day with Dr. Seuss's birthday exclusively. We want to encourage our young readers to read all types of books that are inclusive and diverse and reflective of our student community, not simply celebrating Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss and his books are no longer the emphasis of Read Across America Day. That being said, Dr. Seuss books have not been banned. They are still available to students in our libraries and classrooms. Yes, I understand that, but how long is that going to go on? You know, and in terms of what I find scary about all this is when people were alive at certain points in time, there were cultural norms that were happening, rightly or wrongly. And if somebody existed during a period of time when did Jim Crow laws leave America? Pretty late in the 20th century, if you think about it. And yet, you know, if people grew up there and were affected by those laws, do you pretend that those laws, if somebody was writing or somebody's storytelling was influenced by where they were growing up and when they were growing up, are we going to get rid of those people? We can't think that way. And I wonder, you know, to me, being inclusive means to be inclusive, to read everything. And what you need to do, like, look, we know that Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn use the N-word in those books. Would we not have people, would it be better not to read classics of literature like that? What if the stories, I think Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn are worth reading. There are stories that are worth reading that were written at a certain time and place in American history, and they reflected what was going on at the time. You know, and I think it's important. We need to be smarter. We need to not be protected from these things. We need to be encouraged to learn about them and experience them and understand how and why they were written and what was going on at the time. And like you pointed out, you know, Watchmen making use of the destruction of Black Wall Street and the Tulsa Massacre brought it to the fore. Well, you know what? Our history should do that. These things should be taught in our schools. The fact is, we are falling down on the job. We are learning to think less. People are being protected from what? Protected from the reality of the world? We have to start to learn to grapple with things that are uncomfortable and things that existed. And we have to learn how to address them and come at them head on and really understand and try and understand why these things were what they were and how to not do these things again. We cannot hide from history. We have to confront it. We have to learn about it, even if it's uncomfortable. And if we have to accept what we've done, you know, we have to do that. And That's the only way we're going to learn. We should never be afraid of the truth of the past, the truth of history. We should never be afraid of it. We should never push it aside. We should confront it directly. That's what I think. Bob the Sad Bard, Kowal says, in the cadence of green eggs and ham, I will not have it in my books, what I hear or where I look. Good or bad, I do not care. I don't want wrong think anywhere. It's crazy that we are living in a world where there's such a thing as wrong think. We need to be able to talk about all these issues. We need to be able to confront them. I mean, hell, imagine where we would be technologically if our science was interested in only uncovering the truths they found convenient. Where would we be? Willow says, would you agree, though, that the canceling of books isn't new? Of course it's not new. You must be aware of the long list of banned and challenged books that have existed for decades. The difference is that whereas in the past, books get banned for stuff considered immoral, sex, homosexuality, swearing, witchcraft, blasphemy, etc., nowadays it's more about stuff that's considered offensive to minority groups. Both is wrong, in my opinion. I agree. I totally agree. I agree. Alexander Wilson says, and yes, I don't think anything. No, why should ideas be banned? They're just ideas. Alexander Wilson didn't post the full response from the Loudoun County Public School spokesperson. That's irresponsible journalism. They tried to paint them in a bad light, which is not the case. Well, you know what? After reading what you wrote to me, reading their statement, it is. You know, again, I would say that that's Hollywood then trying to stir up trouble. I will have to look into this, and maybe I'll have an addendum to my show tomorrow that I've been bamboozled by the Hollywood elite press, and they haven't, after reading what you post, Alexander, and I very much appreciate that, perhaps my ire was a little misplaced. But still. Bob Kowal says, Superman and Lois is really, really good. I think so, too. Sadly, a writer, C.W. Let Go, is trying to crap on it, claiming racism because they did not use her input about representation. Are we not allowed to enjoy anything without a browbeating by social authoritarians? Everyone's now weaponizing this kind of thing, and I think it's going to backfire. But what do I know? Alexander Wilson says, the people who thought Colin Kaepernick should be fired for political speech and people who thought Gina Carano shouldn't be fired for political speech is a circle. I agree. I don't think Colin Kaepernick, my only criticisms of him was as a quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, and that's as a Seahawks fan. But he should be able to speak his mind. And especially like in the NFL, which, if you're black in America, the NFL has always been aspirational in certain respects. And I think, if anything, they should be the first people that applaud and get behind Colin Kaepernick for speaking his piece and speaking his truth and doing what he did. I think what Colin Kaepernick did by kneeling celebrates some of the best of what America has to offer. And it should be respected, and people should listen to his message. Anybody who lives in the city of Chicago can tell you that. I mean, give me a break. I think what Colin Kaepernick did is exactly what America stands for. And it really bothered me that, he had to suffer the slings and arrows of people that gave him a hard time just for standing up for people's lives. It's never a bad thing in my book. Obi-Wan Kirknobi. I don't think this is canonical. Hey, Rob, first-time donor making my way through the first 100 episodes of Robservations. Quick question. What is your favorite Andrei Tarkovsky film and why? Mine is Andrei Rublev for its scope and feeling of historical authenticity. Gosh, I go back and forth. Andrei Rublev is really good for the reasons that you've stated. I really like The Mirror. I think The Mirror is great, just as a meditation on the human spirit and memory and but of course, look, I discovered Tarkovsky because of Solaris. So I love Solaris and I love Stalker, but I also really love his final movie, which I also consider one of the great fantasy films of all time, The Sacrifice. The Sacrifice, where one man can save humanity, make a choice. So to me, Solaris, The Sacrifice, and Stalker are three of the great fantasy and science fiction films ever made. And it's interesting. Look, people are going to be like, oh, I'm going to run and watch Stalker. Look, I'll tell you right now. There's a beautiful Blu-ray of Stalker that Criterion put out. And that's another movie. Elizabeth's like, how many copies do you have? I think I have 3 different copies of Stalker. It's a tough sit, man. If you've never seen a Tarkovsky movie, do not make Stalker your first movie. And maybe read Roadside Picnic before you watch it, the Strugatsky brothers story. But yeah, I'm a fan. So, Ivana Seymour Butts. Ivana Seymour Butts. Don't have a cow, man. The worst is yet to come. I fear that. I fear that it is. Frankie Gouge says, I feel it would be better to use the Dr. Seuss books to have a conversation rather than cancel them out. I agree. I agree. I think that that could always perhaps be a good thing. Circus of 5 says, I'd like to send a copy of Fahrenheit 451 to all those folks so keen on fixing the present by burning the past. However, I'm afraid they'd find it problematic and the resulting hashtag cancel Fahrenheit 451 would become a #1 trender. Well, Circus of 5, I feel you. I am right there with you. So with you. Ironic, because that is the message of Fahrenheit 451, the anti-cancel message. There you go. But, yeah, not good. Not good. But I could see that exact same thing happening. Sunset Sea Productions sends in a tip and says, hey, Rob, I'm looking for people to collaborate with on my channel, Sunset Sea Productions. If anyone in the Post-Geek Singularity is interested, hit up my business inquiries email in the About section. Oh, here, I'll put this in the live chat. I don't know what Sunset Sea Productions is, but it could be a opportunity for people. Here you go. In the live chat. So thanks for that Sunset Sea Productions. Justin Jorgensen is here. Hey, Rob, in the Post-Geek Singularity, I just started watching Avatar, The Last Airbender for the first time, and oh my gosh, I'm in love. Such a phenomenal show and one of my favorite animated shows. The characters, settings, humor, dark moments. I love it. Have you seen it, Rob? I have seen it. I've not seen the whole thing. I watched a little bit of it. I probably watched, I don't know, I want to say 10 episodes before I saw the live action version. I want to know what it was. And I loved it. I just never got around to finishing it. But it's great. It's really good. And the mythology is really great, too. What happened, M. Night? How did that happen? Samuel Phillips says, hey, Rob, I'm sure you've seen this, but did you see the Superman news? Do you think Henry Cavill could still get another shot at a solo movie? Thanks. Well, Ta-Nehisi Coates, if Ta-Nehisi Coates is writing Superman, it hasn't been confirmed, but I would imagine he's writing the story of a black Superman, which I'm all in for. I mean, frankly, I wish that they would go to the Milestone universe and do a movie of Icon. I love that. And there are from various Earths, but I think it's going to be very divisive, a very divisive thing when that Superman movie comes out. But I don't understand. Like, Ta-Nehisi Coates has written some really great stuff. And I think he's a great author, and I think that he's a great thinker, and I think he has a lot of great stuff to say about race relations and things. He's a voice definitely worth listening to, and he's been writing comics. He wrote some Black Panther and some other comics. It's like I think if he writes a script, I'm for it. I'm in. Val Zod. Like, I love Val Zod. Michael B. Jordan is Val Zod. I tweeted that the other day. I'm like, that'd be cool. I don't think that's what they're going to do, but it would be cool. I don't know if it was Boss Logic. I think someone did. I got it off the internet. A great picture of Val Zod. I think it'd be great. Look, give me a great story and great characters. That's all I ask. That's all I want. And so I think that'd be great. But Henry Cavill, do I want to see him get another Superman movie? I'd love to. I would love to. I think that would be great. So Samuel, I'm in. Sunset Sea Productions says, also real quick, can you say, okay, I'll do this for you. So Sunset Sea Productions wants me to say, let me do this for you correctly. My name is Robert Meyer Burnett, and you are about to listen to a Sunset Sea production. I'll send you my bill in $10.99. Hey, also, what were the early 2000s like for geekdom? I'm 20, so I never really got to know. I love the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, though. I have to tell you, the early 2000s were great. 1999 was one of the great years for movies. We got a ton of great movies, but then 2000 was when X-Men came. And I really think that it was great. And the new age of the superhero movie, we got that. We got X-Men, then we got the Raimi Spider-Man movies. I even like, Mark Steven Johnson's director's cut of Daredevil. It wasn't perfect, but there was a lot of good stuff. Star Trek was still on the air in the form of Enterprise. It was a good time to be a geek. So, yeah. And seeing Spider-Man 2, man, that was I remember seeing that and going, wow, what a great movie. A person has no name sends in a tip and says, just to be clear, with all this political talk, Post-Geek Singularity members telling Rob our thoughts about him, the show, I haven't written in since I sent Rob that letter. Also, I never found the actress playing Agatha Harkness that attractive, but now please bewitch or whatever. Well, I mean, I think Catherine Hahn's attractive, but I think she's a great actress, right? Isn't she a great actress? I mean, I think she's a great actress. She's certainly playing the part well. Richard says, Alexander Wilson, Dr. Seuss hasn't been canceled, but he should be canceled, though. No, I don't think that Alexander's saying that. I don't think he just wanted to make sure that the statement was clear that the Dr. Seuss books are still there. They're not taking them out. I don't think Alexander was saying that. And I know Alexander well enough. He's been here for a very long time. He's a great cornerstone, foundational member of this community. And what I like about Alexander is he's always been a straight shooter and straightforward, and he seems to be, I don't know him, we've never spoken, I've only spoken to him through the chat, but he does seem to be a very reasonable member of this community, and I think he just wanted to make sure that I had all the facts, which I appreciate. Robert Conrad, I love whenever I'm telling you that battery. I wonder if there's even, can you even see those Robert Conrad batteries every time I see or read your name? Robert Conrad says, I just wanted to send support your way because you always have wisdom to share with us, and I appreciate you. Well, thank you very much. That's very nice. I appreciate that, Robert Conrad. I surely do. But you got to go find Robert Conrad, the actor, to see those commercials. And Robert Conrad starred in Wild Wild West from the 60s, and he's great. Sunset Sea Productions goes on to say, also, Rob, I should have mentioned this before, but my channel is not for profit. I just make videos for fun. Oh, I was just kidding. I'm not going to send you a bill. Sorry if my other donations came across as blatant self-promotion. Hey, I have no problem. You want to send me tips and stuff, and I will shamelessly promote you. I love everything you do. What's your favorite Bergman film? Mine is F&A. Is that Ingmar Bergman or Ingrid Bergman? It must be Fanny and Alexander then. So it's that Bergman. I mean, The Seventh Seal was the first Bergman movie I saw, but gosh, that's tough. I like Persona. I like The Virgin Spring. Yeesh. There's so many. You know what's I can't. I have my Bergman box. It's right there, but I can't pick it up. That Criterion Bergman box is one of my favorite things that I own. I also have the Taschen book, the Ingmar Bergman archives. So, yeah. Pippin is here. Pippin says, I actually had eggs and ham for breakfast. However, the eggs weren't green. I guess I'll be canceling that breakfast combo now. However, me and the boys are having Lembas Elvish bread for second breakfast and fucking nailed it. A person has no name. Richard says, I would prefer cancel culture proponents own their ideas. Plato at least owned the idea of censorship and believed it would create a better society. Why can't they? Don't equivocate and gaslight us and say cancel culture doesn't exist, but it should. Alexander Wilson says, thoughts on Paramount Plus Investors Day. Ooh, there was a lot to unpack there. Paramount Plus had its Investors Day explaining that I believe Paramount Plus goes live on March 3rd. That's what CBS All Access has turned into. I think there was a lot of exciting stuff for Paramount Plus. There's a lot of new shows and a lot of things that are going into development. I mean, who would have thought Frasier would come back? But it is. Yeah, I mean, I think again, there's a lot of stuff. They've got a lot of. We'll see what happens with them, but I'm excited. I mean, as a streaming service, having all of Paramount's films and what they're going to do, all of their different subsidiaries, all under one roof, I think is a really good thing. I like that. So, I just hope. That it'll lead to better Star Trek. Maybe, hey, look, maybe Strange New Worlds is going to be good. Maybe. Alexander Wilson says, Julian Ortega says, not sure if my first question went through, so I'll be sending this. I didn't see it. Are you going to do a marathon of Man of Steel, BVS, and Justice League and stay up till 4 a.m.? I'm going to do it. Hell yeah, I'm going to do it. I think we only have to stay up till 3 because I think it drops at 11 o'clock here. I'm totally going to do that. We are going to watch, for those of you in the know, we're going to watch Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Justice League all at once to have the full-on experience. Alexander Wilson says, hey, Richard, do not put words in my mouth. What the heck? I did not like that at all. That's right. Don't do that. Magic K sends in a super chat and says, Paramount Plus is going to make the next phase of Star Trek. Do you have any confidence in that? No. Not with the current administration. I think Paramount can do whatever they want to do with Star Trek. I think Paramount should open it up to other creators. I really do. I mean, I would like to see other interpretations of Star Trek. I can't the Bad Robot Secret Hideout iteration of Star Trek that's been going on for the last 12 years, I cannot stand it. I hate it all. I think it has been dumbed down. And it is anti-intellectual, it's nonsensical and ridiculous. But hopefully with Paramount Plus, we'll have other creators being able to go in and let's see their visions of Star Trek. I'd love to see that. I think it'd be great. So, yeah, I think it would. I think it'd be great. I have no confidence though, not yet. Richard says, "DM me, Alexander, somehow." There you go, Richard. DM Alexander Wilson. DM him. Anyway, I'm gonna bring this chat to a close. Thank you all very much for participating in today's chat. I want to say thank you all for all the nice letters. I've got a backload of letters. If I haven't read your letter, don't worry. I have 100 more I haven't yet read. We'll get through them. This week, I'm going to be concentrating on the letters and wrapping up the film festival, doing interviews with the filmmakers. So watch out. I'd like to next Friday or next weekend, maybe have the long show where we show all the semifinalists and I have all the filmmakers. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And there's still some things I'm going to put up that will end the film festival. So I know it's been a long wait. I know people have been patient, but we're going to get the film festival wrapped up because my work that I've been wrapped up in is sort of eased up. So everything is being launched. It's all good. So, first of all, I want to thank my moderating staff. I forgot to thank them after whining about movies. I forgot to thank them after Let's Get Physical Media today, so I want to thank them all. I want to thank Mike Bodden, and I want to thank The Richard. And The Richard, of course, you can always find him on the Post-Geek Singularity Facebook page doing dance parties. They're going to do something tonight, I think right after the show. So I want to thank The Richard. I want to thank Joshua Levesque. I want to thank Greg Smith. I want to thank everybody who makes up the my moderating staff because you're all great. Justin Toner, Bunyan Snipe. Thank you all for all the work that you do. I want to thank everybody for generously supporting the chat and the show through super chats and tips. Hey, if you like these chats, please smash that like button and subscribe, as all YouTubers are wont to say, because it does help the analytics and it helps the channel. We need to get those likes up because that's what YouTube wants to see. If you want to send me a letter, you can at the Burnettwork.net website. The Burnettwork.net website. And if you are in Charlotte, North Carolina, or the Charlotte area, You can see the film I produced and edited and was the VFX and post supervisor on, Tango Shalom. We're going to have a lot of exciting news about Tango Shalom very, very soon. We might have very exciting news if you live in either, well, in Montreal, Toronto, or Vancouver. Stay tuned about that, which might be very, very cool. Very exciting. And remember that Dota Dragon's Blood drops on Netflix on March 25th. We're less than a month away from the show that I've been talking about cryptically for such a long period of time. So that's always pretty exciting. And you know what? I've been sending a file to John Campea for the last 2.5 hours. It is a 3-hour, me answering questions for 3 hours. And that should be fun. So watch for that on the John Campea show. And on that note, remember, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear, and all you have to do is listen. Obviously, there will not be a whining about movies tonight. I apologize. We're going to get back to whining about movies. We haven't even watched a movie in days and days, so I apologize. Oops, things are falling all over the place, but we're going to get back to it. So on that note, did I already say every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear? All you have to do is listen. It's true. Anyway, on that note, I bid all of you a fond farewell. Have a better day.